It's been 3 days since this happened. The water, it's all drained out. Got all the fish out, but look at this crack. It's not upsetting. I knew that every second counted, and it felt like I had 5 million decisions to make and only 5 minutes to make them. The tank level was down to about here. My angelfish were all on their sides inside, barely alive. I wasn't even sure if they were alive initially. The plecos were only semi-submerged. I could see their fins above water. Couldn't see the algae eaters at all. It was just about an inch of mud they were surviving in. I didn't know what to do. There were so many things going through my head. I was frozen, but knew I had minutes to decide because I wasn't even sure how many were still alive. I called Mandy and I was barely speaking and put her on FaceTime, and she was like, Matt, and trying to talk to me. And I don't know how she got the kids in the car so fast and got here, but she was here within a half an hour with the kids and they were helping here. So I tried to prioritize how to approach it. And my number one was try to rescue these fish. I wasn't even sure how many were still alive. I could see some were moving. I was really lucky. We only lost 3 angelfish through this. The rest of the fish survived miraculously and are doing pretty well. I saw the angelfish on their side, so they were my first priority. I thought, where can I put these guys, right? And I didn't want to do anything that would compromise the well-being of another tank. So although I have a bunch of tanks set up, there's other things living in there. So the options. I looked at the fish there and realized, okay, there's these giant plecos that they seem like they're all right. They got more time than the angels. The angelfish, we need to get them somewhere quick. And what options do I have? I'm really lucky we have other tanks here, but there wasn't a dedicated angelfish tank ready to go for 20 angelfish. So I looked around at what we had to work with. I have a small tank over here, but honestly, I haven't checked the parameters on it. It's just an old one that's been running. There's some snails, a couple shrimp in there, nothing special. A little small too for angels, I thought. There's this 55, which was heavily overplanted. Some algae eaters at the time, pretty much just vegetation, too dense for the angels. I could try clearing it out, but I wasn't sure it was ready. So the next tank I looked at was this guy right here, kind of overcrowded, but it had room for some angels. The temps were a little cool, but that could work, as could this one. But what was going through my mind was, I don't want to do anything. I want to save these fish desperately, but the last thing I want to do is create chaos in a new tank, leading to disease, and then wind up having either the angelfish not make it because of the stress of the ecosystem, and also create some new headaches or problems or disasters. My first thought in the ideal perfect tank would be where the discus currently are, but those discus over here have just finally started settling in. So I didn't want to mix discus with angelfish. Disease might spread and it might wind up just being pandemonium. Also, the angelfish are pretty beat up and the discus are bigger, and the discus, although non-aggressive, might actually be beating up on the angelfish if I put them in. Plus, disease to and from. It could have just been an absolute disaster with all the angelfish and the discus dying. So then I thought, maybe I'll put my smaller discus, which I've recently all put in here and are finally doing well, because this was the crew of ones that were kind of being picked on in the bigger school. They came from over here in my bigger tank, and I thought maybe I'll merge them all back together, but I've just finally gotten that situation right. So not something I wanted to mess with and create chaos and wind up now having a discus fiasco and nowhere to put them back, especially since these little guys are finally doing well. So I took that option off the table and asked myself, what other tanks do we have to work with? The 3 I really quickly thought to do were this one right here, but that was totally overgrown with vegetation, and there was only 1 air pump in there, so I didn't think it would be able to hold many discus, if any, let alone all of them. And now I have these 2 nano tanks that are pretty heavily vegetative and doing well, and I thought, okay, the angelfish would probably actually do amazing in these 2 tanks, but also probably eat some of the other fish. Now, that being said, the tank temps were kind of low in these 2. I keep them, this one was around 78 and this one was 74. So one of the difficult things I want to do, because ideally especially for the angelfish, if they're kind of beat up, I wanted to give them really ideal temperatures. And that would be like 80, maybe 82, since they're not feeling great. So, but I felt like cranking up the temps in this tank in particular. Let's talk about this one. I wound up moving 4 angels in here. And I turned the tank temperature up to just above 78, which felt like a balance between the ideal of 80 and the current standing of 74 to 76, because I didn't want to rush up the temps and have the whole ecosystem collapse. And you can tell these guys are doing really well now. Definitely some scarring. There's another one around the back. You can see they've got a little beat up, some more than others. This guy's been hiding here. You can see the eye a little glossed. And then the next tank was this giant. Now, the only thing I changed in here, because it was really crowded at the time, and it still is for these guys. There's 10 angels in here, and they're really happy. There was one big log I pulled out of here, but I didn't want to like be cutting back grass and disturbing everything because I'm already putting some new fish in. I don't want to be pulling out vegetation, pulling out so that we could have a total nitrate and ammonia explosion and, again, a crash. Also, I wanted to leave enough cover for the shrimp that are in here. And with that being said, that's another reason why I don't want this to be a permanent solution, because there are a number of shrimp in here who are really great about hiding, but that being said, over time, their populations will get destroyed in there. So that's what we did with the angels. And we only lost 3 angelfish, which to me was a straight up miracle, considering I would have never thought it would have gone that well with those guys. And next, the elephant in the room. Almost literally for fish world, right? So these gigantic plecos we've had. I've had these guys for 8 years almost. And when I got them, they were the size of my pinky, and now I'll give you a good shot, but they're huge. Where do I put them, right? Because they're also really, really destructive. And I wasn't sure where to put them without them absolutely destroying another tank. They rip up vegetation, anything they can fit in their mouth, they'll eat. And so I didn't want to put them in the tanks where the other angels had just gone, because putting the angels alone overcrowded that situation, and adding anything else, you know, would destroy it, particularly a pleco. Again, didn't want to put the plecos with discus, and I had thought maybe I'll set up a new tank, but they were literally like only partially submerged. So I was like, I just need to move them ASAP. So what I did, I had this tank, which was just like totally full of vegetation, snails, shrimp. Sorry, shrimp and snails. I don't think you're thrilled about your new tank mates. But I put those algae eaters in here, and all the Chinese algae eaters are in here as well. And I didn't want to put them with any other fish because they are, A, impossible to get back out of a tank, and B, they will literally eat the sides of other fish like the angels. We'd already been removing them and putting them in here. So I have moved these giant beast plecos in here. Now, there was only one tiny little air stone in here, and so I was like, this tank's gonna get ripped up. The algae eaters are probably actually gonna be in heaven. Look at all that food for them. I mean, they love eating plant matter. The plecos and the algae eaters, this is heaven. But how long before they just eat it all? So with all that eating and pooping, there's gonna be a lot of waste. So what I did was I seriously upgraded. I moved an air filter that is quite a beast. And so I said, you guys will be fine. It's definitely pretty tight for you, but it'll be like it'll be like being on a cruise where you have like massive all-you-can-eat buffet, and look at all that air, right? So I've been monitoring them. They seem happy. They're pigging out. I mean, there's definitely some damage. I'm a little worried about, you know, I don't love seeing them, but plecos, if you know them, man, are they hardy fish. Like, they can withstand anything. So I think they're gonna be great in here. I'm giving myself 1 week to figure things out for them. And I might add some wood down here at the bottom. I took everything out because I wanted to give them as much room as possible, but they're already, it's unbelievable. They've just cleared out so much vegetation. And maybe as it gets a little further, I'll probably start putting some wood towards the bottom, so that way the shrimp that are in there maybe have a place to hide. And my goal is to get these guys out of here in a week. In the past, I know I would have rushed to solve everything in the moment, and I would have scrambled things around, created brand new tank setups. They would have imploded, and something I've learned, particularly with fish tanks, is like, don't overdo it. So today I'm gonna clear out some of this vegetative matter, but in the day I wasn't going to try to set up the perfect tank for everyone. I was just gonna try to create great health for them, and I wanted to make sure that all the fish were back in parameters that were as good as possible, which ultimately means don't disturb the existing tanks. But now I need to think about what's next for these guys. And I'm trying to be disciplined and say I'm gonna give a certain number of days now that everything's stable before I actually start building something. So I've decided next Monday, I'm gonna give it, 9 days, where these fish will be in their temporary spot, which, I don't want to move them again too quick anyway, so it works out for them too, I think. They'll all be stable in these situations here for now. So I'm gonna start working on a plan, but I'm thinking through some options, you know, and the options I have, I want to give the plecos a big home. I'm definitely worried about another tank. I'll show you, we have these big 150-gallon tanks here that I bought, and they're beautiful, but after that tank explosion, well, would you trust it? I mean, this one, the beams were cut out of, so I don't love that, and I was thinking about repairing them. But I might just keep that guy for a terrarium. And maybe I'll mess with this one, but my acrylic tank was there for 9 years and then finally imploded. It makes me think things don't get better with age, you know, when it's an aquarium. So I'm rethinking it. I'm thinking I might just create a really big pond here for the plecos. And for the angelfish, maybe I do set that 150 up and reseal it. Maybe I create a beautiful wall tank right here and get a brand new tank. I wish we had more money to do that, but do our best for them. I learned some lessons from this and I want to share them because, you know, one of the things about caring for other living things is the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know much. And this was one of those situations, you know, acrylic, it's bulletproof. I was told no need for them in New England because it's overkill. There's no earthquakes. They can't crack. And crazy enough, this one actually cracked. Here's the seam and it cracked outside of the seam. The seam is this line right here, and there's a crack next to the seam. So I don't even understand what happened and how acrylic cracks, something to learn about. But it taught me also to never underestimate cracks. Like the smallest crack is only the smallest crack until it explodes into a bigger one. That's the way fractures in glass work. You know, they're invisible. You know, it's always the straw that breaks the camel's back. And for cracks, you know, there'll be slow break, and all of a sudden explodes into one that makes the whole piece of glass fall apart. And even looking here, right, all of a sudden I'm starting to see, wow, look at that. There's cracking going on. And that was gonna go too. So for whatever reason, there was some outward pressure on this tank that after at least a decade since I've had it, it exploded out. So that was lesson one. The other lessons I've learned, another lesson that I'm really fortunate I just happened to have was have an emergency tank plan. So if your tank does fail all of a sudden, what are you gonna do, right? If all of a sudden you wake up and there's no water, you know, where are buckets? Just have in mind what to do. Even if it's as simple as having dechlorinator ready and some tank starter, just be able to put things in buckets and have a big tub ready for whatever emergency might come your way, because you never know. I just learned this. I've learned it before and I learned it one more time, and I've been fortunate. I kind of know I have a bunch of tanks, but I should have very concise plans for every single tank as to what's going to happen if something like that goes down. Another tip, monitor closely after you do any changes in a tank. So the day before, we did move some wood around, which bumped it, and sometimes the smallest bump can cause a leak the following day. I've had this happen before. So anytime you do a water change even, or any sort of messing with the tank, make sure you're around for after that for a period of time to check in on things. We went home for the night and I was back in the morning, fortunately. You know, thank God I was there early in the morning. I'd love to say be wary of old tanks, but the other situation I can remember was a 55-gallon tank that was used and the top brace had been cut out. And I went to an aquarium store and talked to them about it, and they said, you need a new tank. So I took everything out of that tank and bought a brand new tank and put it in that brand new tank I bought. And a few weeks later, the brand new tank actually busted a leak in the bottom seal, drained out, and all the fish were actually some of these plecos made it through that one too. So this is their second situation like that. That was 5 years ago. So even brand new tanks can fail. You can be really unlucky. Mandy, thank you. You came through, talked me through what to do, helped me figure out what fish to put in what tanks. And it's really nice to have someone else to work with on things. Any other ideas people have, by all means, let us know. And if there's anything we could be doing in the temporary that you guys suggest, we just want to do whatever's best by these living creatures. We love them and just want to give them a good home. So let us know what you think. Thank you.